After 12 years of financial support, my parents texted, "You're not welcome for Christmas. Your sister's husband needs family space." I didn't argue. Just replied, "Okay." Talked to my lawyer, and quietly calculated the $520,000 I'd given them. When I stopped all payments and sold my lake cabin, they suddenly appeared at my door. I'm Jessica Ellison. I'm 32 years old, and my own family uninvited me to Christmas via text message after I had spent over $500,000 keeping them afloat. It all came to a head on a freezing Sunday morning in November. I was sitting in our usual spot at the Daily Grind, a local coffee shop with worn vinyl booths. I'd been coming here with them since I was a teenager. I got there first and slid into the booth by the window. I watched them arrive. My parents, Richard and Eleanor, and my younger sister, Marie. They moved like a single unit, their faces pinched by the cold and something else I couldn't yet name. They didn't smile when they saw me. They slid into the booth across from me, the vinyl sighing under their collective weight. The air immediately grew thick with unspoken words. My mother fussed with her scarf. My father stared out the window. Marie was scrolling on her phone. My father cleared his throat. "We've already discussed this, Jessica," he said, his voice flat and gray. "You won't be coming for Christmas this year." The words didn't register at first. I looked at him, then at my mother, searching for a sign this was some kind of joke. Her eyes darted away. "It's just David needs his privacy, dear," she murmured, her voice thin. David was Marie's husband. It's their first Christmas with little Emma in the new house, and he wants it to be just the core family. The core family. The phrase was a dagger. I was the core that paid for the house they were celebrating in. I was the core that funded the business that bought Marie the time to even have a family. Marie finally looked up from her phone, a smug smirk playing on her lips. "Besides, Jess," she said, leaning forward, "Emma's only 2. It's not like she'd even remember you were there anyway." That was it. The last straw. The utter nullification of my existence. I wasn't a person. I was furniture that could be removed without anyone noticing. A strange icy calm washed over me. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a crisp $20 bill, laying it gently on the table. "For the coffees you were about to order," I said, my voice unnervingly steady. I stood up, slid on my coat, and walked out into the biting cold without looking back. Back in my quiet apartment, I sat in the gray gloom, replaying the scene. The shock began to recede, and something new began to form. It was hard and sharp and cold. It was resolve. I opened my laptop and created a new spreadsheet, overdue investments. Then I picked up my phone and called Michael Davis, my lawyer. "Michael," I said, my voice holding new resonance. "It's Jessica Ellison. We need to talk. As soon as possible." Michael Davis' office was on the 34th floor, a glass and steel perch that looked down on the entire city. I sat across from his imposing desk and walked him through the numbers, line by excruciating line. It was a verbal autopsy of the last 12 years of my life. "The total," I concluded, my throat dry, "is $520,142.68. That's the amount I have documented flowing from my accounts to theirs." Michael leaned forward, scrolling through the tabs I created. Mortgage support, Marie's business ventures, David's debts, household expenses. Each one was a litany of my quiet compliance. "And you have statements for all this?" he asked. "Every single one," I confirmed. "I'm a financial analyst, Michael. I live by the paper trail." "This is comprehensive and frankly staggering," he said, meeting my gaze. "What is it you want to do now?" "I wanted to stop," I said, the words feeling solid. "All of it? Effective immediately. I want all recurring payments canceled. I want every authorization I've ever signed rescinded. I want a legal firewall built between my finances and my family." He raised an eyebrow. "A firewall is an aggressive posture. There will be consequences." "I'm aware," I said, my voice hardening. "I'm counting on it." The first reaction came less than 48 hours later. Stan Kowalski, the bank manager and my father's golfing buddy, called with forced concern. "Jessica, your mother was just on the phone all in a tizzy. Seems there was some hiccup with a mortgage payment transfer. These things happen. Give me a buzz and we'll get it sorted out." When he called my office line, I had no choice but to answer. "There's no error, Stan," I cut him off. "The payment was not processed because the authorization was formally rescinded by my legal counsel." "Rescinded? What are you talking about?" As I said, it was a legal directive. "If you have questions, direct them to my lawyer, Michael Davis." The folksy mask dropped. His voice became stern, condescending. "Now listen here, young lady. Families have spats. You don't just turn off the taps on your own parents. Think about the stress you're causing them." "I have thought about my stress levels for the past 12 years, Stan. This is me finally lowering them. We're done here." I hung up, my heart hammering. It was the first real test, and I hadn't backed down. The rest of that week passed in a blur of unexpected freedom. For the first time in 12 years, I wasn't fielding panicked phone calls about late payments or emergency expenses. My evenings, previously consumed by family financial crises, stretched out before me like uncharted territory. I found myself actually leaving work at a reasonable hour, something I hadn't done since my early 20s. On Wednesday evening, I did something I'd been putting off for months. I finally organized my home office. As I sorted through stacks of papers and old files, I came across a folder I'd forgotten about, Personal Goals 2019. Inside were handwritten notes about dreams I'd abandoned. A business certification I'd wanted to pursue. A photography class I planned to take. A weekend trip to the mountains I'd been saving for. All of it had been sacrificed on the altar of family emergencies. Marie's car troubles. David's business expansion loans. My parents' temporary mortgage assistance that had stretched into years. Every time I'd saved money for myself, it had somehow found its way into their accounts instead. I pulled out my laptop and started researching that photography class again. The instructor, a local artist named Marcus Chen, still offered weekend workshops. His next session was in 2 weeks. Without overthinking it, I registered and paid the fee. It felt rebellious and terrifying and absolutely necessary. The following evening, I did something even more radical. I went to a wine bar by myself. Not to drown my sorrows, but simply because I wanted to try their Thursday tasting menu. I sat at the bar, savoring a glass of Pinot Noir, and struck up a conversation with a sommelier about the vineyard's history. It was the first conversation I'd had in months that didn't revolve around someone else's problems. As I walked home that night, the city lights reflecting off the wet pavement, I realized I was actually enjoying the silence. My phone hadn't buzzed with urgent family drama all week. No frantic texts about overdue bills. No guilt-laden voicemails about my responsibilities. The quiet wasn't empty anymore, it was peaceful. Friday brought an unexpected revelation. I was reviewing my personal budget, something I did monthly, when I noticed an interesting pattern. For the first time in over a decade, my savings account had actually grown that month. Not by much, just a few $100s, but it was growth nonetheless. Money that would have automatically flowed to my family's various crises had stayed put, earning interest, building my own future instead of subsidizing theirs. I stared at the number on my screen, and for a moment, I felt guilty. Then I remembered Marie's smirk, David's calculated email, my father's dismissive tone. The guilt evaporated, replaced by something much more powerful, possibility. That afternoon, my colleague Amanda mentioned she was looking for someone to split the cost of a weekend cabin rental in the mountains. It's this gorgeous place with a hot tub and hiking trails, she said during our coffee break. Perfect for disconnecting from everything. The old Jessica would have declined immediately, citing family obligations or financial prudence. Instead, I heard myself saying, "That sounds perfect. Count me in." Amanda's face lit up. "Really? That's fantastic. You've seemed so stressed lately, this will be exactly what you need." It occurred to me that my co-workers had noticed. They'd seen the weight I'd been carrying, the constant tension of managing everyone else's lives. Now, for the first time, they were seeing glimpses of who I might be without that burden. That weekend, I couldn't stay in the city. I got in my car and drove 2 hours north to the lake, to the cabin. As I drove, my mind drifted back to the day I bought it. I was 28, had just landed a huge promotion. I found the A-frame cabin after months of searching, nestled in tall pines with a wide deck and sturdy dock. I paid cash for it. I remembered bringing my family to see it for the first time. Marie was already talking about which bedroom would be hers. My mother was planning where to put her flower pots. My father did a thorough inspection, then clapped me on the shoulder. "Well done, daughter," he'd said. "Now the family has a place to get away. A real legacy to pass down." The family. The legacy. He hadn't said, "You have a wonderful place, Jessica." He'd absorbed it, co-opted it, socialized my private victory into a collective asset on the spot. And I, so desperate for his approval, had let him. I'd started giving them financial support early in my career after landing a lucrative position at just 22, plus a substantial inheritance from my grandmother that I'd foolishly shared instead of protecting. Pulling up the gravel driveway, I saw smoke curling from the neighboring cabin's chimney. Colleen Meyer was on her porch, wrapped in a thick blanket, a mug in her hands. We had always exchanged neighborly waves, but nothing more. "Jessica," she called out. "Didn't expect to see you up here. Thought your sister and her family were coming up to get the place ready for Christmas." My jaw tightened. They had already told the neighbors their plans for my property. "Change of plans, Colleen." She studied my face. "Well, the coffee's fresh and the fire's warm. You look like you could use both." I found myself in her comfortable armchair minutes later, and the story just came out. The years of support, the text message, the scene at the cafe. I laid it all out. When I finished, Colleen nodded slowly. "I had to get a restraining order against my own daughter," she said quietly. I stared at her, shocked. She tried to sell my house. Had me sign some papers, said it was for estate planning. Next thing I know, a realtor shows up. My own daughter. She took a slow sip. First, I cried for a week. Then I got angry. Then I hired the meanest lawyer I could find. We proved fraudulent inducement. I won. Haven't spoken to her in 3 years. She turned to look at me. They only see the beautiful fruit on the tree. They enjoy it, take it for granted, complain when it's not to their liking. But they never think about the roots buried in the dark, doing all the silent, thankless work to keep the whole damn thing alive. Her words struck me like a physical blow. For my entire adult life, I had been the roots. Don't let them poison your soil to the point where nothing can grow again, she said. As I walked back to my cabin, her words echoed in my head. I looked at my cabin, standing against the twilight sky. This wasn't just a house. It was a symbol. It was the ultimate fruit they believed they were entitled to. I pulled out my phone and opened my web browser. I didn't search for therapy articles. I typed in the name of a real estate firm and called immediately. Sarah Jensen Realty. This is Sarah speaking. Sarah, I said, my voice firm. My name is Jessica Ellison. I own the A-frame property on North Shore Drive, and I need to sell it immediately. The fallout began in earnest Monday. My mother called 3 times before noon. Her messages progressed from worried to demanding. Jessica, honey, it's Mom. Please call me. The bank manager said you mentioned a lawyer? I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding. Jessica, I don't understand why you're doing this. Marie's car payment was declined. Her workshop equipment payment, the tools she needs to make a living, that was declined too. This is affecting her livelihood. Jessica Ellison. You call me back this instant. Your father is furious. Whatever point you think you're making, you've made it. Now fix it. Her focus was laser sharp, the money, the disruption. Not once did she ask how I was. My father's call came that afternoon. What the hell do you think you're doing? He barked. I'm managing my finances, Dad. You're throwing a childish tantrum and hurting your mother. She's a nervous wreck because of you. Mom seems most nervous about Marie's car payments, not my emotional state. This is about Christmas, isn't it? You're so petty. You're gonna punish the entire family over a simple scheduling conflict? Grow up. It was never about Christmas, Dad. It was about respect. I hung up before he could respond. The truly seismic revelation came from Marie that evening. She called, her voice a cocktail of fury and panic. What is your problem? You're blowing up my entire life. My suppliers are calling. David is threatening to take Emma and go to his mother's. You're ruining my marriage. Your marriage is not my responsibility, Marie. Neither are your business debts. I'm your sister. We're family. We're supposed to help each other out. You've always been like this. Mom and Dad were already pissed at you. I had to do damage control after you went around bragging about paying their mortgage. The world stopped. I felt the air leave my lungs. What did you just say, Marie? You heard me. It was so embarrassing. I had to tell them you were probably just stressed, that you were exaggerating to make yourself feel important. But I had never told anyone. Not a single soul. The shame of my parents needing help was mine alone. Marie had lied. She had gone to our parents and painted me as a boastful braggart while positioning herself as the humble, protecting daughter. I see, I managed to say. Thank you for clarifying that, Marie. I ended the call. Sleep was impossible that night. Around 2 a.m., I went to my home office. I started digging through old external hard drives, searching for digital correspondence. Then I saw it, a folder labeled family_miscellaneous_2019. Inside was a subfolder, email_chains. One title jumped out, Jess's attitude. The email thread opened, and reading it was like watching a secret recording of my character assassination. It began with Marie writing to our parents. Hey Mom, Dad, hate to be a downer but I'm getting worried about Jessica. She keeps making comments about how much everything costs, how she's helping out. It feels like she's holding it over our heads. It's making David really uncomfortable. Just thought you should be aware. My mother's reply was almost immediate. Oh, dear. I was hoping I was imagining it. You know how proud your father is. He would be mortified if he thought Jessica was telling people we needed her help. But the final email was the one that stopped my breathing. It was from David, long and calculating. Eleanor, Richard, I'm writing because I love this family and see a potential issue. Jessica's financial involvement is creating an unhealthy power dynamic. It puts Marie in a difficult position, making her feel like a second-class daughter. For our family's long-term health and for the stable environment we want for Emma, perhaps it's time to encourage Jessica to step back. Perhaps limiting her involvement in intimate family events, like holidays, would give us space to recalibrate without direct confrontation. A soft reset, allowing everyone to find their proper footing. A soft reset. It was all there, a premeditated, bloodless coup. My exclusion from Christmas wasn't recent. It was the culmination of a multi-year campaign. I picked up my phone. It was 2:30 a.m., but I didn't care. Sarah? It's Jessica Ellison. I want you to call the cash buyers first thing in the morning. Tell them we accept their offer, but I have one condition: the fastest possible closing date the law allows. With the cabin sale in motion, I began laying the foundation for a new life. I remembered Evelyn, the owner of Page and Pine Bookstore, who had invited me to a business book club months ago. My evenings had been reserved for family crises then. Now they were my own. I walked into the bookstore on a Tuesday night feeling like an imposter. Evelyn guided me to a cozy back room where people were gathered around a table, discussing business strategies. For the first time in years, I was in a room where my identity wasn't daughter, sister, or family ATM. I was just Jessica. When I offered a financial critique of the book we were discussing, a man at the far end spoke up. That was the most incisive analysis I've heard all night. You cut right through the rhetoric to the structural weakness. This was Robert Anderson, a legend in the local tech scene. After the meeting, he approached me. That was sharp analysis, Jessica. You have a knack for seeing cracks in the foundation. What do you do exactly? I'm a senior financial analyst. Mostly risk assessment for mergers and acquisitions. Figures, he chuckled, pulling out a business card. I'm advising a promising startup. Great concept, brilliant engineers, but their financial plan is a mess. They need someone with your eye. Would you be interested as a paid consultant? I was floored. More validation than I'd received from my father in 3 decades. The next couple weeks were productive. I threw myself into my day job and spent evenings on the startup's financial documents. It was clean, logical, everything my family life was not. But it wasn't just the work that energized me. For the first time in years, I was building relationships based on mutual respect rather than financial dependency. The photography class I'd signed up for turned out to be exactly what I needed. Marcus Chen was an excellent teacher, patient and encouraging, and the other students were a diverse group of creative professionals who treated each other as equals. During one session, we were practicing portrait photography, and I found myself behind the camera for the first time in years. Through the lens, I saw the world differently, in terms of light and shadow, composition and possibility. When I showed Marcus my shots, his face brightened. You have a natural eye for this, Jessica, he said, examining the photos on my camera's LCD screen. Have you considered doing some freelance work? I know several local businesses looking for someone to do their marketing photography. The suggestion caught me off guard. A side business? The old Jessica would have immediately thought about how the extra income could help with family expenses. But this Jessica, the one who was slowly emerging from years of financial servitude, had a different thought entirely. What if I kept every penny for myself? The weekend trip to the mountains with Amanda was a revelation. We stayed in a cozy cabin that overlooked a pristine lake, spending our days hiking and our evenings by the fire, talking about everything and nothing. It was the first vacation I'd taken in 3 years that wasn't a family obligation disguised as leisure. You know, Amanda said as we sat on the deck watching the sunset, you're different lately. More present. Whatever you've been doing, keep it up. I almost told her everything then, about the family drama, the financial manipulation, the years of being taken for granted. But something held me back. This new life I was building didn't need to be defined by what I was escaping from. It could simply be what it was, mine. Back in the city, I threw myself into the startup consulting work with renewed energy. Robert had given me access to their entire financial history, and what I found was both fascinating and concerning. The company had brilliant technology and a solid market strategy, but their cash flow management was a disaster waiting to happen. I spent 3 straight evenings rebuilding their entire financial model from scratch. Where they saw success, I saw unsustainable burn rates. Where they planned expansion, I identified critical vulnerabilities. It was complex detective work, and I loved every minute of it. When I presented my findings to Robert, his expression grew increasingly serious. Jesus, Jessica, he said, scrolling through my analysis. If you hadn't caught this, we would have been bankrupt within 8 months. This is exactly the kind of thinking we need on the team permanently. The validation was intoxicating. Here was someone who valued my expertise, who saw my analytical skills as an asset rather than a tool to exploit. It reminded me of who I was outside of my family's financial drama, a competent, intelligent professional with something valuable to offer the world. But the universe, it seemed, wasn't quite done testing my resolve. That Tuesday evening, as I was reviewing Robert's feedback on my report, my phone rang. The caller ID showed my mother's number. I'd unblocked them temporarily, curious to see how they'd respond to the new reality. I let it ring twice before answering. Hello, Mom. Jessica, thank God, she said, her voice thick with relief. I was so worried you'd blocked us permanently. Listen, honey, we need to talk. There's been a misunderstanding with the bank and... There's no misunderstanding, Mom, I interrupted calmly. The payments stopped because I stopped them. But sweetheart, you don't understand the position this puts us in. Your father is beside himself. Marie's business is suffering. We're family, Jessica. We help each other. The word family used to be my Achilles heel. It used to make me fold immediately, guilt and obligation washing over me like a tide. But sitting in my quiet apartment, surrounded by the evidence of my new life, my photography equipment, Robert's business plan, the vacation photos from the mountains, I felt nothing but a clear, cold certainty. You're right, Mom. Family does help each other. But help goes both ways. When's the last time any of you helped me with anything? The silence on the other end was deafening. I could practically hear her scrambling for an answer. Well, we've always been supportive of your career. How? By dismissing it as being counting? By never asking about my work? By treating my success as a resource to be mined rather than an achievement to be celebrated? That's not fair, Jessica. We've always been proud of you. Really? When did you last tell me that? When did you last ask how I was doing without immediately following it up with a request for money? Another silence. Longer this time. We're your family, Jessica. That's just how families work. No, Mom. That's how exploitation works. And I'm done being exploited. I hung up before she could respond. My hands weren't shaking this time. My heart wasn't racing. I felt nothing but a deep, abiding peace. One evening, as I wrapped up my report, my phone buzzed with a notification from the family group chat I'd muted but never left. It was from Marie. Hey everyone. Planning on driving up to the cabin next weekend to get it ready for Christmas. Need to put up lights, clear the deck. Mom, can you bring the old ornaments? I read it twice. They were making decorating plans for a house that was about to belong to someone else. I took a screenshot and forwarded it to Michael with a single line. For the record, please ensure the new owners are aware they have the right to press trespassing charges if anyone attempts to use the property without permission. Robert called that day, ecstatic with my report. Jessica, you're a miracle worker. You found the fatal flaw in their burn rate. I want you on the call with the Board of Investors next week. The final conference call was scheduled for December 1st. Everything was converging, the demolition of the old and construction of the new would collide on the same day. They arrived on a Sunday night, exactly 1 week before the cabin closing. The doorbell chimed, unexpected and jarring. I looked through the peephole and my blood ran cold. There they were, all four of them huddled in the hallway like a delegation of doom. My parents, Marie and David. My mother bustled in first, holding a familiar tin. We brought your favorite, dear. Oatmeal raisin. I baked them myself. It was a lie, they were from the bakery down the street. David swept in next, clutching a gift bag. We saw this and thought of you, he said, his voice smooth. My father and Marie filed in last, moving to my couch with impatience and ownership. Jessica, my father started, commanding. This has gone on long enough. Your mother is worried sick. You've made your little point. Now act like a daughter. What foolishness would that be, Dad? I asked, dangerously calm. Don't play dumb, Marie sneered, her leg bouncing nervously. The accounts. The money. You're gonna call the bank tomorrow and fix the mess you made. I let my gaze travel over each of them. The martyred mother with her bakery cookies. The manipulative brother-in-law with his empty gift. The entitled sister who saw my life as her personal credit line. The domineering father who saw my compliance as his birthright. There's nothing to fix, I stated. The arrangements you were accustomed to are over permanently. David, seeing brute force failing, stepped in with crafted sympathy. Jessica, we know you're upset about Christmas. We understand. We're so sorry if your feelings were hurt. Of course we want you there. We're family. Family, I repeated, letting it hang in the air. I looked directly at him. You stopped being my family the moment you wrote that email suggesting a soft reset to my mother. The moment you decided my presence was a strategic inconvenience to be managed. The blood drained from his face. His mask of composure shattered. For a split second, I saw the real David, a creature of cold ambition, cornered and exposed. My father stood up, flushed with anger. That's enough games. We are not leaving until you agree to set things right. We have plans. Next weekend, we're going to the cabin to prepare for the holidays. This was it. I walked to my desk and picked up a simple blue file folder. I placed it on the coffee table with a soft thud. That might be difficult, I said quietly. The new owners take possession of the cabin on Friday afternoon. The statement was so direct it took them a moment to process. Then comprehension dawned. My mother gasped, her hand flying to her chest. David's face went ashen. My father sank back as if his legs had given out. Marie found her voice first, a choked squeak. What? You can't sell the cabin? That's our family cabin. No, Marie, I said, my voice cutting like ice. It was never our cabin. It was always my cabin. The cabin I bought with my money. The cabin I paid the 6-figure property taxes on, insurance, utilities, every single year while you treated it like your personal resort. I tapped the blue folder. In here, you'll find the original deed with my name only. The fully executed sales agreement. Confirmation of the wire transfer. The closing document scheduled for 2 p.m. this Friday. It's done. Marie was white as a sheet, staring with raw hatred and horror. My father looked like he'd aged 10 years. And right then, my phone began to ring. The screen lit up, Robert Anderson. A slow smile spread across my face. I pressed speakerphone, never leaving their shattered faces. Jessica, sorry to call at home. Hope I'm not interrupting anything. Not at all, Robert. Fantastic. I have spectacular news. The board meeting was a home run. They loved our presentation, called your financial modeling genius. They greenlit the project, full funding effective immediately. I saw my father flinch at financial modeling. He'd once called my career a boring bean counter's job. And that's not all, Robert continued. They've approved my proposal for the new subsidiary. Jessica, I want you to run it with me as a full partner. 50-50 equity partner. This is the big one. Partner. Equity. The words echoed in the suffocating air. I watched the last hope drain from my mother's face. They weren't just losing their ATM, they were witnessing its transformation into something utterly beyond their reach. So clear your schedule. We're taking the team out for celebratory dinner Friday night. Time to celebrate with people who are actually happy to see you succeed. The kind of family that lifts you up. I looked at the 4 stunned people in front of me. You're right, Robert. The kind of family that lifts you up. I wouldn't miss it. I hung up. The silence that followed was the dead, heavy silence of total defeat. My father seemed to have shrunk. Marie was breathing in short gasps. David was utterly still. My mother finally broke the spell. How could you, Jessica? She whispered, tears spilling over. After everything we've done for you, how could you do this to your own family? The sheer audacity almost made me laugh. I met her tear-filled gaze without a flicker of guilt. You're asking the wrong question, Mom. You shouldn't be asking how I could do this to my family. You should be asking how my family could have done what they did to me. There was no answer. They began gathering their things in slow motion. My mother loved the cookies. David abandoned the gift bag. They filed out silently. I didn't escort them to the door. I heard the door click shut, then their voices in the hallway, hushed, vicious whispers. I could hear Marie blaming David, David blaming my father blaming everyone. The sound of their implosion faded as they walked away. I turned the deadbolt. The solid thunk was one of the most satisfying sounds I'd ever heard. I leaned against the door for a moment, listening to the silence. Then I walked to my kitchen and opened a bottle of wine, not to drown my sorrows, but to celebrate. I poured myself a glass and stood at my window, looking out at the city lights below. For the first time in my adult life, I was completely, utterly free. The next morning brought an unexpected sense of lightness. I woke up naturally, without the anxiety that had plagued my mornings for years. No urgent texts awaited me. No voicemails full of financial emergencies. Just silence and possibility. I made myself a proper breakfast, something I rarely had time for when I was constantly managing family crises, and sat at my table reading the business section of the newspaper. There, in a small sidebar article, was a mention of Robert's company and our successful funding round. Seeing my work acknowledged in print, even indirectly, filled me with a pride I'd never experienced from any family interaction. My phone rang around noon. It was an unknown number with a local area code. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Jessica Ellison? The voice was professional, crisp. Yes, this is Jessica. This is Janet Morrison from Morrison Financial Consulting. I hope you don't mind me calling directly, but Robert Anderson gave me your number. I understand you've been doing some remarkable work in risk assessment and financial modeling. I sat up straighter. Yes, I've been consulting on a project with Robert. Well, word travels fast in our industry, and frankly, we've been looking for someone with your particular skill set. Would you be interested in discussing a more permanent arrangement? We're prepared to offer significantly more than what most firms pay for this level of expertise. My heart began to race, but this time with excitement rather than anxiety. A job offer. A real one, based on merit, not family obligation. I'd be very interested in learning more, I said, trying to keep my voice professional despite my growing excitement. Excellent. Are you available for lunch tomorrow? I'd love to discuss the details in person. After I hung up, I stared at my phone in amazement. This was what it felt like to be valued for my skills, to have opportunities come to me because of my abilities rather than my bank account. It was intoxicating. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my college roommate, Sarah, who lived across the country. We'd lost touch when my family obligations became all-consuming, and I'd always felt too guilty about my financial situation to maintain the friendship. Jessica. Her voice was warm and delighted. Oh my God, it's been forever. How are you? For the next hour, we talked about everything and nothing. Her new job in Portland, her recent engagement, her travels. When she asked about my family, I surprised myself by saying, "Actually, I've made some big changes in that area. I'm focusing on my own life now." "Good for you," she said, and I could hear the sincerity in her voice. "You always gave too much of yourself to everyone else. I'm glad you're putting yourself first for once." As we said goodbye, Sarah added, "You know, I'm coming to your city for a conference next month. We should definitely get together. I want to hear all about these changes." After hanging up, I realized I was smiling. Really smiling, for the first time in months. I was reconnecting with people who knew me before I became my family's personal ATM. People who remembered who I was when I wasn't drowning in other people's problems. The lunch meeting with Janet Morrison exceeded all my expectations. She was sharp, professional, and impressed by my work. The position she offered wasn't just a job, it was a partnership track with profit sharing and the opportunity to build my own client base. "Honestly, Jessica," she said over dessert, "we've been looking for someone like you for 2 years. Your approach to risk assessment is exactly what our clients need. Robert showed me your startup analysis, and it's some of the most insightful work I've seen in this field." When she named the salary, I had to work hard to keep my expression neutral. It was nearly double what I was currently making, with performance bonuses that could add another 50% on top. "The only question," Janet continued, "is whether you're ready to fully commit to this level of responsibility. This role requires someone who can focus entirely on the work without outside distractions." Outside distractions? If she only knew how recently that would have been an impossible requirement. "I can absolutely commit to that," I said, and meant every word. Walking back to my office after lunch, I felt like I was floating. This was what success felt like when it wasn't immediately siphoned off to solve other people's problems. This was what ambition looked like when it wasn't constantly derailed by family emergencies. I thought about Marie, probably struggling with her failing business. About David, scrambling to maintain their lifestyle without my subsidies. About my parents, facing the reality of their financial situation for the first time in over a decade. I felt nothing. No guilt, no urge to rescue them, no familiar twist of anxiety in my stomach. They had made their choices, just as I was making mine. A year later, my life was unrecognizable in the best possible way. The company Robert and I co-founded was a bona fide success story. Our financial risk management approach had become the industry standard. We were featured in Forbes, moved into a larger downtown office. My professional relationship with Robert had blossomed into genuine friendship, the mentorship I'd always craved. I had standing Friday dinners with him and his wife Clara, who embraced me as their own. My friendship with Evelyn from the bookstore had deepened into coffee conversations and quiet anchoring. I drove up to the lake monthly, not to see the cabin, but to lunch with Colleen Meyer. She was my touchstone, a living reminder of the strength it takes to choose yourself. During one autumn lunch, she gave me the final update on people who now felt like characters from a book I'd read long ago. "Saw in the paper that Richard and Eleanor Ellison sold their big house," she told me. "Downsized to a small condo. Heard their club membership lapsed." "And my sister?" Colleen sighed. "Marie and David separated about 6 months back. Her workshop business went under when the funding dried up. Last I heard, she was working some sales job she hates. Funny how love can have a precise price tag." I felt nothing. It was like hearing weather from a distant state. Their lives had absolutely nothing to do with me anymore. A week before Christmas, exactly 1 year after being uninvited, a thick envelope arrived at my office. I recognized my mother's elegant handwriting instantly. The letter was several pages of manipulative contrition. She wrote of sleepless nights, profound regret, finally understanding their mistakes. She'd followed my success in business news. "My dearest Jessica," it began. "There is not a day I don't think of you. I see your picture in the business section and my heart swells with pride I was too foolish to show, but that pride is followed by sadness for what we've lost. It was a good performance until the final paragraph. I see how successful your company is, how you've built a wonderful new life, and I see it as a sign from God. Perhaps with your new resources and what I've always known to be your generous heart, you can find a way to help us begin again. Perhaps we could find a new family home, a place for all of us to build new memories together." There it was. The hook. This wasn't an apology, it was a business proposal. They saw my success not as mine, but as a new, bigger well from which to draw. They were the same people with a more sophisticated vocabulary of regret. I stood up from my partner's desk, looked out at the city where I'd built a life on my own terms. I held the expensive pages, then walked to the heavy-duty shredder. I didn't hesitate. I fed the letter into the slot and watched the machine turn my mother's manipulation into powerless confetti. That was the final test. The end of the story. And I had passed. The following spring, I was sitting at an outdoor cafe with Evelyn and Colleen. The late afternoon sun was warm, and we were laughing about some absurd story. In that moment of simple, unburdened camaraderie, I felt contentment so deep it almost took my breath away. "You seem truly happy, Jessica," Evelyn said, her eyes twinkling over her teacup. I am, I replied, and the words felt solid and true. I really am. For 32 years, I'd operated under false assumptions. I thought family was an unbreakable bond you were born into, an obligation to fulfill no matter the personal cost. I thought love was demonstrated through silent sacrifice, and I believed my value was tied to my usefulness to others. Losing my biological family felt like violent amputation. But now, with clarity of time and distance, I realize I didn't lose a limb, I had a sickness removed. A poison that had been slowly draining the life out of me for decades. The most important lesson: you don't have to accept the family you were given. You have the right to choose the family you deserve. My real family is now a feisty widow who taught me the difference between fruit and roots. A gentle bookstore owner who showed me new worlds were possible. A brilliant business partner who saw my potential and treated me with unwavering respect. It's a small circle, but mighty, built not on obligation and guilt, but on mutual admiration, shared laughter, and genuine care. It took me a long time and over $500,000 to learn the difference between being useful and being valued. Being useful means they need something from you. Being valued means they simply want you, your presence, thoughts, company. I no longer sign checks for people who don't appreciate the person signing them. I invest my time, energy, heart, and resources in people and projects that invest back in me. I look around at my new life, at my real friends, at the bright future stretching before me, and I know with certainty that I finally found my real legacy. It wasn't a cabin. It wasn't a company. It was myself.